Snow fell in soft, silent sheets over the small town of Silver Creek, Colorado, covering the streets, rooftops, and empty sidewalks in a blanket of white. The cold had driven everyone indoors hours ago, leaving the town quiet and still. Inside Carter's diner, Ethan Carter wiped down the last table, his movements slow and tired after a long day. The neon, open, sign buzzed faintly in the window, reflecting against the snow outside. Ethan had owned the diner for 5 years, ever since he returned from the army and tried to rebuild a peaceful life. Most nights were the same: serve customers, clean up, go home to an empty apartment, and repeat. He didn't complain. He had learned to live with the quiet. He turned off the lights and stepped outside, locking the door behind him. The cold air bit into his face immediately, and he pulled his jacket tighter around himself. His breath formed small clouds as he walked toward his old pickup truck parked across the street. That's when he saw her. At first, she looked like nothing more than a shadow near the bus stop bench. But then she moved slightly, her hand trembling against the metal frame. Ethan froze. His instinct sharpened instantly. He looked around, wondering if anyone else had noticed her. No one had. The street was empty. He walked closer, his boots crunching against the snow. With each step, he could see more clearly. She was young, maybe in her early 20s. Her coat was thin, completely unfit for the freezing temperature. Snow had gathered on her hair and shoulders. Her face was pale, her lips slightly blue. "Hey," Ethan said gently, kneeling beside her. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open slowly, unfocused at first. She looked at him like she wasn't sure if he was real. When he reached out to help her sit up, she gasped sharply, her body tensing in pain. "My ribs," she whispered weakly. "My ribs are already broken." Her voice was barely audible, but the pain in it was unmistakable. Ethan immediately pulled his hand back, afraid he might hurt her more. His chest tightened with concern. "Broken ribs. In this cold. Alone. What happened to you?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. Her eyes closed again, her breathing uneven and fragile. Ethan's mind raced. He didn't know who she was or how she ended up here, but he knew one thing: if he left her, she might not survive the night. Without hesitation, he removed his heavy jacket and carefully draped it over her shoulders. She was freezing. He could feel it even through the fabric. "You're safe now," he said firmly but gently. "I'm here. I won't leave you." Her eyes opened again, and for a brief moment, they met his. There was fear there. Pain. But also something else. Relief. Snow continued to fall around them, silent witnesses to the moment. Ethan stood and quickly opened the passenger door of his truck, then returned to her side. He moved slowly, carefully sliding one arm behind her back and the other beneath her knees, doing everything he could to avoid her injuries. She cried out softly, gripping his shirt weakly, but she didn't resist. "It's okay," he whispered. "I've got you." For the first time in years, Ethan felt something stronger than routine. Stronger than loneliness. He felt needed. And he wasn't about to let her face this night alone. The engine of Ethan's old pickup truck roared to life, breaking the heavy silence of the snowy night. He adjusted the heater to its highest setting, hoping the warmth would ease her suffering, even if only a little. She lay slumped against the passenger seat, her breathing shallow and uneven. Every small movement made her flinch. Ethan gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles pale. He had never felt this kind of urgency before. Every second mattered. "Stay with me," he said. Quietly, glancing at her. "We're almost there." He didn't even know if she could hear him. Her eyes were half closed, her face pale under the dim dashboard light. Snow continued to fall heavily, making the road slippery and dangerous, but Ethan didn't slow down. The nearest hospital was nearly 30 miles away in Denver. His mind filled with questions. Who was she? What had happened to her? Why was she alone in Silver Creek, a town where strangers were rare and everyone knew each other? But none of those questions mattered right now. All that mattered was keeping her alive. At a red light, he glanced at her again. Her hand rested weakly beside her, trembling slightly. Without thinking, Ethan reached over and gently held it. Her skin was ice cold. "You're not alone," he said softly. "I promise." To his surprise, her fingers moved faintly, weakly curling around his hand. It wasn't strong, but it was enough. Enough to tell him she was still fighting. When the hospital building finally appeared in the distance, Ethan felt a surge of relief. Bright lights glowed through the falling snow like a beacon. He pulled into the emergency entrance and jumped out before the truck had fully stopped. "Help," he shouted, his voice echoing in the cold air. Someone help her. Within seconds, nurses and doctors rushed outside with a stretcher. They carefully lifted her from the truck, their faces serious and focused. What's her name? One nurse asked quickly. Ethan hesitated. He didn't know. I don't know, he admitted. They wheeled her inside without another word, disappearing behind the emergency doors. And just like that, she was gone. Ethan stood there, frozen in place, snow landing on his hair and shoulders. His heart pounded heavily in his chest. He realized how strange this was. She was a complete stranger. He owed her nothing, but he couldn't leave. He walked inside slowly and sat down in the waiting area. The bright lights felt harsh after the darkness outside. Minutes passed, then an hour, then another. Every time the emergency room doors opened, his head lifted with hope. Finally, a nurse approached him. Are you the one who brought her in? She asked gently. Ethan stood immediately. Yes. Is she okay? The nurse gave a small nod. She has multiple fractured ribs and signs of physical trauma. She's in serious condition, but she's stable now. You got her here in time. Relief washed over him so suddenly he had to sit down again. Can I see her? He asked. The nurse hesitated, then nodded. For a moment, she led him down a quiet hallway into a small hospital room. Machines beeped softly. She lay in the bed, pale but alive, oxygen tubes resting beneath her nose. Her eyes slowly opened. They searched the room until they found him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He stepped closer. You're safe, he said gently. She looked at him with quiet confusion, but also recognition. She didn't know his name. She didn't know why he stayed. But in her eyes, Ethan saw something he hadn't seen in a very long time. Trust. Morning light filtered softly through the hospital window, casting pale gold across the quiet room. Ethan sat in the chair beside her bed, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands loosely clasped together. He hadn't meant to stay all night. He had told himself he would leave after seeing that she was safe. But somehow, he never did. The steady beeping of the heart monitor had become strangely comforting. It meant she was still here. Still fighting. He watched her face carefully. Without the snow and fear, she looked younger. Fragile, but strong in a way he couldn't explain. There were faint bruises along her cheekbone and neck, marks that told a story he didn't yet know. Her fingers moved slightly. Ethan straightened. Immediately. Her eyes fluttered open slowly, adjusting to the light. She winced faintly, her breathing tightening as the pain reminded her of reality. Easy, Ethan said gently, his voice calm. You're in the hospital. You're safe. Her eyes shifted toward him, studying his face carefully. She looked confused at first, her brows pulling together slightly. Her voice was weak and dry. Ethan reached for the glass of water beside the bed and carefully helped her take a small sip through the straw. She swallowed slowly, every movement cautious. You found me, she whispered. It wasn't a question, it was a realization. Ethan nodded. You were outside my diner. In the snow. Her eyes lowered, and for a moment, something like sadness passed across her face. Why? She asked quietly. Ethan frowned. Why what? Why did you help me? She asked, her voice trembling faintly. You didn't know me. He didn't have an answer prepared. He hadn't done it for a reason. He had done it because leaving her there had never been an option. Because you needed help, he said simply. She stared at him, as if trying to understand something deeper behind his words. My name is Ethan, he added gently. She hesitated, her lips parting slightly. Lily, she said softly. It was the first piece of her he had been given. Lily, he repeated, offering a small, reassuring smile. The name suited her. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was quiet in a peaceful way. After a moment, she shifted slightly and immediately winced in pain. Ethan noticed and instinctively leaned forward. Don't move too much, he said. The nurse said your ribs are fractured. She let out a small breath, frustrated with her own weakness. I didn't think, she stopped, her voice breaking slightly. I didn't think anyone would stop. Her words hit him harder than he expected. No one deserves to be left like that, he said firmly. Her eyes filled with emotion, but she didn't cry. She just looked at him like she was seeing something she had forgotten existed. Kindness. Footsteps approached, and a nurse entered the room, smiling softly when she saw Lily awake. Well, look who's finally up, the nurse said warmly. She checked the monitors and adjusted Lily's blanket. You're lucky, the nurse said gently. He stayed all night. Lily's eyes shifted back to Ethan, surprised. "You stayed?" she asked quietly. Ethan shrugged slightly, suddenly feeling awkward. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." She looked at him for a long moment, her expression softening. For the first time since he had found her in the snow, Lily didn't look afraid. And for the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel alone. The next few days passed slowly, measured by the quiet rhythm of hospital machines and the steady fall of snow outside the window. Ethan found himself returning every morning before opening the diner and every night before going home. It wasn't something he planned. It just became something he did. Lily was getting stronger, though the pain was still visible in every careful breath she took. The bruises on her face had begun to fade from deep purple to pale yellow, but the sadness in her eyes lingered. One afternoon, Ethan entered the room carrying a small paper bag. "I brought you something," he said, holding it up slightly. Lily looked at him with curiosity. "What is it?" He reached inside and pulled out a small container. "Chicken soup. Homemade. From the diner." For a moment, she just stared at it, as if she didn't know how to react. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "I know," he replied simply. "But I wanted to." He helped her sit up carefully, placing pillows behind her back so she wouldn't strain her ribs. She winced slightly but managed to settle into a comfortable position. As she took the first small spoonful, her eyes softened. "It's good," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "It's the best thing on the menu." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. It wasn't forced. It felt natural. After a few minutes, Lily spoke again. "I wasn't supposed to be there," she said suddenly. Ethan didn't interrupt. He just listened. "I came to Silver Creek on a bus," she continued. "I didn't know anyone. I didn't have anywhere to go." Her fingers tightened slightly around the blanket. "I was trying to get away." Ethan felt a quiet heaviness settle in his chest. "From what?" he asked gently. She hesitated, her eyes lowering. "From someone who promised he loved me," she said softly. "Someone who lied." Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. "He wasn't always cruel. At first, he was kind. He made me feel safe. But slowly, things changed. He got angry. Controlling. One night, he didn't stop." She paused, her breathing uneven. "I left when he wasn't home. I took the first bus I could." Ethan felt anger rise inside him, sharp and protective. He clenched his jaw but kept his voice calm. "You did the right thing," he said firmly. She looked at him, searching his face. "I didn't feel brave," she admitted. "I felt terrified." "Being terrified and leaving anyway," Ethan said quietly, "that's bravery." Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly blinked them away. "No one ever said that to me before." He didn't know what to say to that. So he just stayed. After a moment, she asked, "Why do you keep coming here?" The question caught him off guard. He thought about it carefully. "I think," he paused. "Because I know what it feels like to be alone." She studied him, sensing there was more behind his words, but she didn't push. Outside, the snow had stopped falling. Sunlight broke through the clouds, shining softly through the window. For the first time since she arrived, Lily noticed the warmth. And for the first time since Ethan found her, he realized he wasn't helping her just because she needed saving. He was helping her because, somehow, she was helping him too.